Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Seamus Ford. I'm Landmark's Director of Community Engagement, and welcome to Landmark Difference Makers. Today, we're going to be interviewing Susan Murabana, who's the CEO of Traveling Telescope and a leader in African astronomy. Susan is also the president of the African Planetarium Society and serves on the board of the International Planetarium Society. With a background in social sciences and a master's in astronomy, she has dedicated her career to promoting science education across Africa. We look forward to exploring her journey from a grassroots education to global outreach and discover how she's inspiring the next generation of stargazers. Susan, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Seamus, and thanks for the introduction. I'm happy to be joining you from Nairobi.
It's really, really cool. One of the things, well, let's just start with this actually. Let's give people a background about Traveling Telescope and really how it came into existence and how you came to be involved in it.
So I got involved in astronomy outreach by accident. I first looked through a telescope in my 20s and saw Saturn and the rings floating in space. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. I'd like to share what I've experienced with school kids. And this was in the early 2000s. And then I got involved with some outreach programs through, one was University of California, Berkeley, and the program was called Hands on Universe. And I visited the US for a short time as a short-term scholar. But then when I got back to Kenya, I really wanted something more local or something that I'd have more involvement, but more sustainability with, because at that time, the projects were mainly supported or we got funding when we could. So in 2013, there was a total solar eclipse and the path of totality was passing through northern Kenya, a place called Turkana, which is famous for the early man fossils and archaeology and anthropology and paleontology. And I had never been to that place. So I reached out to members of my Rotary Club, I'm a Rotarian, and told them about, organizing a trip to get there. I learned about this total solar eclipse through a friend who at that time ran a project called Astronomers Without Borders, Mike Simmons. And so Mike had told me about it. I was excited. And through him, I got an organization in the US to donate 5,000 safe solar glasses. So these are for us to protect our eyes while looking at the sun during totality, because you shouldn't look directly at the sun. It could, blind you. And the idea was to go around in schools and share these glasses. And other things had happened. But during that trip, so it was almost like a 1 week overland trip, because it's quite a journey to get to northern Kenya, and we're going with an overland track. A guy called Chu got in touch with me and he was like, oh, I want to come, and Anyway, he ended up coming, we ended up liking each other. And through that, we realized we had a love for astronomy. I hadn't figured that out, but we ended up setting up the Traveling Telescope. So I got to realize my wish of having something local. And at that time, we primarily went to schools because we both came from a passion of wanting to share what we had experienced through looking through telescopes. But we also wanted to start up the astrotourism side of our what do I call it? Business. So we were registered as a company, and the main reason we have it registered as a company is to keep it sustainable, so that we can keep going to schools or reaching out to people. And also really for me, I think it was buy-in. If we could get Kenyans or people living in Kenya to want to pay a little bit for the service, that meant we could be sustainable because there's a need for what we were doing or an interest. And also we could be able to reach more numbers. So that's where it stems from in a very long answer. I'm sorry.
I know, but it's wonderful. I want to come back to the total solar eclipse a little bit later. So who are tell us a little bit about the people that you're really committed to reaching through Traveling Telescope.
So I think when we met, Chu and Chu and I are the founders of a traveling telescope, and we're a married couple. So when we met, we both had an interest in sharing the wonders of the universe with schools. I had done a bit of outreach in schools, and at that time, I had received a portable planetarium. So this is an immersive tool that you almost feel like you're traveling through space. And I was already taking it to school. So I'd already had a bit of an experience with schools. And then Chu, who's originally from the UK, had been doing public events with the public. But also, I think for him coming from the West and seeing what we had as a resource in Kenya, he was able to see what that there was an opportunity for astrotourism. So Kenya is unique. It's right at the equator. I had to say it's unique. It's right at the equator, so it means that you're able to see the whole sky at different times, but also so the northern and southern sky. But also when you look at objects, when they're overhead, there is less atmospheric interference. So Saturn and Jupiter and the planets look, and the moon look really, really nice. So it's really nice to offer people an opportunity to look through the telescope. So those were the main areas we looked at: the astrotourism as the business side, and then the education as the social good, the impact.
Mm. Well, you said something about being on the equator and that you can see the full sky depending on the time of year. So that would mean that you could see the Southern Cross at certain times of the year, but you could also see the North Star at certain times of the year.
Uh, we can't see the North Star, however, in Kenya. It's a bit too low for us, but yeah, you can see the Big Dipper and the constellations of the northern sky, as well as the constellations of the southern sky, and the constellations of the zodiac. So you get to see quite a number of things in the sky, which is really good. And in most places in Kenya, you don't need to wear many layers to do astronomy at night. In fact, there are places where you just need a t-shirt and you're good to go in the middle of the night. And some of the places, my favorite, I think there's a photo showing right there. Some of these places, it's not just the sky or just showing it to tourists, it's also the culture. You go to communities that are very connected with the night sky, and they come out and they want to share that with you, and that's always very interesting to see and experience.
Yeah, something I'm really struck by in what you just shared with you're referring to a photo of, I believe those are Maasai people that were looking in
Yes.
the telescope, people that live very far from cities. Um, all of us look at the night sky, and every human being with sight, since there's been human beings, has
Yes.
looked up at the night sky.
Correct.
And what's amazing, because I'm just really struck by this now, is that when you look up at the night sky, you don't see borders. You don't see anything that's owned by humans or by a country or by a territory. It just is the vast emptiness. I wonder, 'cause I know that you often hear astronauts after their first trip up to the ISS, or they come back kind of profoundly transformed
Yes.
in recognizing something about humans. And I wonder if that is something that shows up in the work that you do, that kind of transcendent experience of all of our differences kind of losing their meaning.
I love your question or your thoughts. So I've been privileged to meet a few astronauts. I've met Dr. Mae Jemison, who's the first woman of color to go to space. Dr. Rakesh Sharma, who's the first Indian man to go to space, and Scott Kelly, who has a twin brother who's is he the governor or senator of Arizona? But yeah, he's also an astronaut. And I met Scott Kelly, the first astronaut to be in space for a year. And all of them have that, I think they returned with that. And then I've also met, I think, the first astronaut to go to space from UAE. And they all have that view or that feeling of once they get back on Earth or once they go to the ISS or the space station, when they look at our planet, they don't see those borders. And some of them say they look for their country. And then once they look, it's not longer about the country, it's about their planet and this host planet. Back to us and where we go to, some of the places we go to are really remote. As I said, one of the areas we focus on is astrotourism, and we've partnered with some high-end lodges. In fact, one of them, we were privileged to have Madonna look through our telescope and pay for it. We didn't know she was going to be our guest, and it was very exciting when we knew about it. Before she had come, her music was playing in my ear, and I was setting up everything. So happy. I do it for every client. It's not just her. But she and some of these clients are some of the wealthiest, and some of the places you have, the local community as the people working in these lodges, and they all look up. At that time, you're all the same. You forget how wealthy or how important some of the people are when we're looking through these telescopes. And I always feel that what we're offering is a gateway to the night sky, reminding people that we have this really beautiful resource that we can look up to and remind us how unique we are, how we need to, take care of our host planet, because there's no other home we can go to. I know we're trying to go to Mars and all these other places, but we still can't get there. This is the only place we know. And if there's a threat from outer space, if there's a big asteroid or something coming towards us, what will we do? Are we going to work together as humanity, or are we going to work individually? So we're constantly reminded about that, but also going to some of these lodges gives us access to some of the poorest communities and schools. By us taking our telescope to a lodge, it means that we can visit a remote school that would otherwise never have an opportunity to have either planetarium session or telescope, look through a telescope. And so there's a lot of ways where our programs benefit each other, hopefully for the better of the community generally, and the country, and hopefully the planet.
What are some of the challenges that you faced? And at some point, there had to be an aha moment that really got you excited about this. What was that?
Even before we set up the traveling telescope, I was already involved in astronomy outreach. So the traveling telescope, the faces of the traveling telescope are Chu and I. But before that, I was already doing astronomy outreach. And at that time, the biggest challenge was it felt that I didn't have a team to work with. It felt I was alone. In fact, I remember telling my mom and my dad that I wanted to go into astronomy outreach. So I was not really interested in academia. I really wanted to share the beauty of the universe with people because I knew that it had a way of sparking curiosity and intrigue, especially for young kids. But I, at some point, didn't have any funds to do it. And it felt so far-fetched, especially when I talked with my parents and friends many years ago. But with time, I met a team. Even with the traveling telescope, we do encounter challenges from, traveling to very, very remote areas. Our car keeps breaking down. We have to keep fixing it, for example, because you have to go through difficult terrain. We also have very bulky and heavy equipment. I can't carry our showstopper telescope on my own, for example. It's heavy, and then we have to stand for long hours. It's not, I know there's the romance of the stars and everything, but the behind the scenes work and how much you need to work hard and then try to remember everything. That's a whole nother conversation. It's mostly still male dominated. There are not very many women, and even the ones who come to work with us in the traveling telescope do not want to do the heavy lifting, and they don't want to be in that part. And for me as a woman, I want to hold another woman's hand. I want company, you know. I want to argue the men with some other female voice. So it sometimes gets lonely in that sense. However, you know, passion and you know, experiences and everything keep us going. It's not a product that you just tell someone, this is a shoe, it's orange in color, do you like it? No, it's just, you can't just sell it easily. There's a lot of things you have to explain, or sometimes physically go there for someone to get what you're trying to offer, whether it's a school or a client. And sometimes there's the argument of why invest in space. And for example, in our continent, we have so many other problems. It's always perceived as an elitist or rich man's career, woman's. So trying to break down some of these stereotypes or ideas through, you know, showing, you know, young kids in remote areas. And you know, we're privileged as Africans or Kenyans to have that sky, and not that you don't have it in the US, but, you know, trying to really make people see it as a resource, as something we should be proud of as we embrace development. Okay. And then the aha moment, I have many. One of my favorites was, you know, seeing Saturn and its rings through a telescope when I was 20 something, I think 22. And I was like, all my 22 years, I've never seen this. Like, what is that? And how comes I didn't know? And, you know, and it was not longer a textbook image. It was the real thing. And that really made me excited. My first total solar eclipse was also a aha moment for me. And getting my first telescope. Can you believe a company decided to buy me my first telescope worth about $300 at the time? And that was also just a Kenyan company. So I felt those, you know, goodwill and buy-in from the local community.
What's it like when you have a young person or a person that lives so far away from a city experience seeing the rings of Saturn or, you know, some other wonder in the sky? What's that like?
It's, I think, and we've talked about it a lot with you and some of the team we work with. We have a team. I think some of the schools we go to that are remote and removed from Nairobi, these kids know this is their only opportunity. And so they're really there trying to absorb everything you tell them, but revealing the sky that is always there for them and showing them that that thing that looks like a star is actually a planet, and that's how it looks like. They just have expressions that are priceless. And I think we have some images that would show how excited they are. And we hope that even if we don't get them to be astronomers or space nerds or whatever, they become, you know, more interested in their education and realize there's a bigger world outside there for them, much bigger than their village, that they can be part of through their education and taking more focus with their education.
Mm. What do you think is the prevailing thought that people have when they really have that moment of wonder?
Most people go like, okay, the expression is, oh, wow, oh my God, some cast. But the thing that normally goes through most of their head is I think the fact that we are, you know, quite tiny compared to the vastness of our universe. And sometimes we forget that, yes, we're important, but we don't know what's out there as well. So that's something that sometimes comes up. I think for me, the first time I looked through a telescope and saw Saturn, I was reminded how our planet is up there floating in space, and we are there moving with it. And yeah, it's not something I thought of before looking through a telescope. But also there's I think the need to share what you see through the telescope, because with a telescope, you're really experiencing it alone. And then we have the planetarium where it's kind of communal. And with a telescope, yes, we give what we call a star safari. We give you a guided tour of the night sky. But when you're looking through, you're almost alone with that experience. And there's always, I feel, an interest to share what you're seeing with someone else. And that's what we experience as well with people. And then there are questions, lots of questions that come up. Some we're not able to answer, which is cool. We just want to create world that generation of people who are able to question and imagine.
When you talk about imagining and young people, most of us never aspire to a possibility that doesn't occur to us. Most of us are people who kind of, engage with the ideas that we bump into. And there's something about that experience of the vastness of space and how insignificant we are that I think opens up a different kind of possibility for what people. And I know, sorry, that one of the things that you're really committed to is inspiring young people to be interested in science, to be interested in astronomy, to be interested in the universe. How do you see what you do, or perhaps even you have anything to share about how uh, you're accomplishing that?
So we've reached directly, we're a very small team. We've reached hundreds of thousands of school kids directly, 400 to 500,000 over the 10 years. We've had a few reach out to us on LinkedIn saying they've pursued careers in the space industry, and have a few who visited us and are in the IT world, and they're like, oh, you visited our school and it was really cool. And those moments are very uplifting for us, because sometimes you go to a school with 1,000 children, sometimes 500, and it's all rushed, because it could be the planetarium that we're taking, or the telescope, and we wouldn't remember all the kids because they're not there for a really long time. But when someone gets back to us after a few years and says what that meant to them and help them define their career, that is so powerful for us. And we've been fortunate to encounter those experiences. So for us, I think we're just hoping to really give, in fact, we believe that every child should at least once in a lifetime have a lesson under the night sky, with or without a telescope. Just look up and, question and figure out things, because it's a free resource for them. And hopefully that could spark something in them. Yeah.
I know for myself, I have had the opportunity to see two complete solar eclipses, travel to see them. Where I live in North America, there happened to have been two of them in the last 7 years that were
You're so
within,
lucky. You're so lucky to have
yeah.
had all those eclipses in the US.
Well, I remember, there are two things about it that really stood out for me. One, just, the incredible beauty of it. And I had no idea, the way that the shadow of the actual eclipse, when it refracts through, like, for example, the leaves of a tree, you see the eclipse on the ground. Like, you actually can see the shape of it in the ground. But when the totality happened, the first time I was with a very large group of people in a park, and it was moving. It just, like, I got choked up. And, despite being able to explain the physics of all of it, and it's the sun and an object in front of it, and you're in a shadow, and there was just something so profound about all of those people together experiencing the same moment of wonder. And all of those things that people would normally bicker about, like, cease to exist for those 4 minutes. Just extraordinary. And I've asked a couple questions about this, but there's something about, well, I don't know. I'm going to ask your opinion. Do you think that there's something about space that kind of has a unique ability to have us, to use a landmark term or phrase, get off it or give something up about all of our opinions?
I think so. I think there's something I'd call spiritual, for lack of a better word, where you just feel this urge, I guess. Um, or yeah, I don't know, there's something about it. And it's because the sun, I think also the sun and the moon are very much part of our lives, and we need them to live and survive. And so it might not be something that you realize, but I guess the witnessing an eclipse, I've not witnessed many, but the few I have, and one of the ones that stands out for me, other than the one where I met my husband, was the one in Tanzania. We traveled to Tanzania with our two boys, and they're really young. There was a massive crowd, and everyone just wanted to see what was happening, and there was so much excitement, and yeah, and it's just something unique and different. And obviously, the traditional stories about why this happened in the past, and also seeing how the animals behave when the darkness is coming and everything. It's just it's unique, like having darkness for 2 minutes. The one where Chi and I met was only 15 seconds of darkness, but it was still, it was still dramatic because we were supposed to see the black sun, and we ended up having it ended up raining a little bit, like the weather pattern changed and all that. So it's really cool. But also I feel beyond just the eclipses, just looking at the planets and the sun and everything, there's something spiritual about it. And with Landmark, I think for me at least, when I did the forum, we were at a place where we were still trying to figure out how to reach, like, very scared of doing stuff, but wanting to do it. And just doing the forum and becoming a graduate, we're able to just put ourselves out there and say, okay, this is it. Whatever happens, happens. We're going to do this, and we're going to be bold about it. And I'm so glad I did the forum, because it gave me confidence, or I accepted whatever outcome, which was really at that time empowering for me. And I've done a few at the seminars, which at the end of every seminar felt, yeah, I think I need to go for another seminar now. But I've also always felt, I feel, yeah, I'm bolder now. Yeah.
Well, you answered a question I did want to ask you, which is, with the training that you've had and, the people that we interview, the commonality is everybody's participated in Landmark's programs, is how, specifically what you've got empowers you in this project. Like the training that you've gotten out of Landmark, or an idea, or, something. Is there anything that you put to use regularly? I know what you said about kind of, jumping in.
Yeah, I think there was, I can't remember. I need to refresh my Landmark, but I think there was, for me, identifying who I was and being okay with who I was. I think that came out clear for me at some point during the forum, the main forum, but also during the seminar, because I think with the traveling telescope and the role I play, I felt a lot of weight on me sometimes. But when I did the seminar, I was okay with, it's okay for other people in the traveling telescope to have roles and be recognized, and you're the overall foreseer. I'm the overall foreseer of what happens, but there's a team behind it. And to be honest, I'm very proud of our team. Obviously, Chu is a huge part of it. He does most of the photos, although the photo of the Maasai, that is my photo, and I'm very proud. And there's other people like Ronald, who's an astrophysicist, who's quite good at the theory and the technical side as well. And we have other people who are good at the education side and the other skills we need. So just looking at us as a team and being okay with giving responsibilities to others and accepting that that is part of your identity as a company. It's okay. And I think that I got from Landmark. And it's something I'd struggled with for a while, because I think when we're building the planetarium, I didn't do so much of the dirty work. Maybe the marketing, and it's like, okay, now everyone is saying I've built a planetarium, and no, but it was a team, and decisions had to be made and all that, which contribute to the overall structure and the planetarium. So I had to be okay with it at some point. And Landmark has played a huge role in some of the internal struggles I had with the role, because I struggled also with the attention and things like that, which I think I'm shy. So, but yeah, there's a boldness I got out of Landmark.
One of the things that you're pointing to, it's an idea that you really, we have a program that a lot of projects are developed inside of called the Self-Expression Leadership Program. And, one of the things, about that is the idea that, when you're being used by or kind of animated by, given by, or just kind of expressing a possibility in the world, it grants you a permission you wouldn't give yourself. Like, it's not Susan speaking, it's the possibility of what traveling telescope can be that's speaking.
Yeah.
And I find that also has a way of really inspiring people in a way that just individually, we're just individual people. It's ideas that inspire people and the opportunity to participate in them that really inspire people.
Yes. Yeah.
One of the other questions I have, and this might put you on the spot a little bit, but you often hear that this could be the African century. With all of the education. Here we are at the beginning of the 21st century, and Kenya and countries in West Africa with all of the resources and education and the changes that are taking place. That there's really a chance that something huge is underway. If you assume that's true for a moment, how do you see what you do playing a role in building an African century?
Wow, that's really on the spot. I don't know. I think next generation of leaders who are more informed, looking through our stuff. Imagine if you have a president who's gone to space or something like that, like just very forward thinking. I think I'm proud to be African. I see a lot of good stuff happening in the continent, and so many amazing things. Growing up, I might not have perceived the continent to be what it is, and the more I live, see, the more I'm proud of this continent. There's so much good and so much talent in the continent, and talent in the youth. We have the biggest number of youth who are going to be, the leaders who are already leaders. You see them fighting for the rights, not for themselves, but for us as well. So there's a lot of hope, and I'm sure, as you say, something big is going to happen. And it would be amazing if it's, attached to space and something, the first astronaut from the continent who looks like me, or other Africans coming from somewhere in our region. That would be cool. And it's going to happen at some point, at least something huge or some really cool tech that's used globally. Yeah, I think it's happening. It's just when are we gonna see it? Yeah. So yeah, and I always tell my kids, yeah, this is a continent. But again, I really think it's good to be, global, to understand what's out there, to work together, to have a sense of identity, but also be happy and respectful of other people and where they come from and what they believe in. Yeah, as long
Yeah.
as it's not disruptive. Yeah, it's really, really having good citizens, and I think for us, it's if you can get good leaders, who can take, especially when it comes to politics, who can take our continent forward. Let me say country, because I can't speak so much for the continent. I think they're good leaders in other parts of Africa. And I think space has a way of, it could be one of the ways of getting people in that direction.
Yeah, if you look back, as an American, you can look back at the time of the Apollo missions and, all of the focus and all the energy that went into putting somebody on the moon. And it was an incredibly unified time.
Mm.
And it's not a secret that there's a lot of political division in the United States at the moment. And I, look, I've been around long enough that I remember watching, the moon landings as a young child. And I think that there's something about space, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, that just is pure. The emptiness of space kind of makes it self-evident. All the things that we disagree about are very small. And that when
Yeah.
we work together, we can do things that are just quite simply amazing.
Mhm.
There's two questions before we wrap up that I want to ask you that we started asking people. Most of the time when somebody works really, really hard at something, there's something that, an experience, something they're moved by that really, uh, is a place they go to stay motivated, or just, something that really animates their actions. And I'm wondering if there's anything you want to share with us about what moves you about what you do.
I have so many um moments that are very moving, but there's one that stands out for me, one or two that stand out for me. We are now, especially during COVID, and even now, we're getting to a world where there are a group of people who don't believe in science, who believe that the earth is flat. So we went to the school. This time it was with both the planetarium and the telescope. And this young boy he came out of the planetarium and he said he now believes in science from that experience. And that moved me because, you know, we, we need a generation that believes, because scientists work hard. We just share the information they work so hard at creating through research. And sometimes you meet people who would say, we think the moon landings never happened, or we think the earth is flat, or things like that. And it's a growing movement. And those are difficult times where you get a young person appreciating science. It's cool. Whenever we go to spaces, and I'll keep referring to young people, I think, because I never got the experience to enter a planetarium or look through a telescope as a young person. And that was my passion. That's where the passion came from after experiencing it. Whenever we go, whether it's, paid events or free events, the excitement from kids and them wanting as to go to their school or to return back or to bring a friend. Those are always very uplifting moments because we know we've achieved something, and we become famous when we visit some of these places because everyone just knows who we are on the day at the school or something we're doing. So some of those moments are uplifting. Obviously, I talked about, celebrities paying for events and calling us again after 2 years to do it again. Then we know we're doing it right. So some of these things are very uplifting. We've gone to schools where there's a place we went to in northern Kenya, in Turkana, where the kids could not speak English or Kiswahili. Kiswahili is our national language. But when they looked up, there was just that expression that was priceless. You could tell that they were in awe of what they were seeing. And so with no verbal expression, we just had a lot of satisfaction, and luckily we're able to capture those moments. We've gone to places where we've invited elders from the Maasai community to be part of our activities with school kids, and they've wanted to share the traditional stories and hug the microphone just because they have this connection, as we all do, to the night sky. So those are some of the moments I can recall. But obviously, it's always fun driving through the wild Kenya landscape, seeing elephants and lions, and sometimes setting up where the wildlife is just right there next to you, and being reminded that we share this planet with all this biodiversity. Like we can't live, or the animals cannot live without a planet, and we all have to live in harmony. So those are some of the moments that I enjoy and just give me a lot of joy.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, one final question. Another one that we've taken to asking people in the interview. 100 years from now, you won't be here. I won't be here. What do you want people to say about you when you're no longer here?
Wow. I do know I won't be here 100 years from now. No.
As far as we know.
I hope that people will remember that those a crazy couple who really were passionate about the night sky and wanted to share that, whether it was at night or during the day. And yeah, just be remembered as the Astro. Some people call me Astro Susan, Star Susan, whatever. But anything to do with the stars, even if it's just the moon. She already got the name Mr. Moon, so I wouldn't get that one. Yeah.
Oh,
Hopefully something starry.
Thank you for being here with us today. Thank you for having all of us look up. It's really a privilege to be with you, Susan. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Seamus.